Well, two things. Number one, they did a study on identities and the
Mhm.
power of identities for addicts and addicts that are trying recovery. And one of the strongest identities that someone in recovery can attach to that keeps them in recovery is I
Mhm.
am a good parent. So it's a very strong identity, and to have it as a father is extremely strong. And it's actually, it happens to be rare. It's usually the mother that grasps onto that. So
Mhm.
that's, it says something about you and what you think of your kids, you know. And then number two, there's a point in the process where you have to start it for yourself.
Mhm.
You have to. Like, I got to a point where, there was nothing left. I didn't have any options. I didn't have anybody, even around anymore that I could do anything for. I had lost everything. And it got to a point where I had to do it for myself. Um, and then very shortly after that, once I got it, right, in
Mhm.
order to keep it, it had to immediately switch to doing it for other people. As soon as I actually was freed, as soon as I actually got it for myself and had that psychic change and understood that, my life has just changed. I just found freedom from something I didn't think I was ever going to find freedom from. Then it was extremely imperative that I switch the focus to other people.
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Listen to the Vibes, and I'm happy to welcome back Mr. Adam Gunton here. He is an author, and you are the founder of Recovered on Purpose. So, for the audience, can you tell us exactly what that is?
Yeah, 5.5 years ago, I was homeless and addicted to IV drugs. And, I'd been trying to stop for forever. Like, I had been trying everything that was available and I couldn't stop. And then I finally found recovery on November 6, 2017. I was 148 pounds at the time. I'm 215 now. So I was like very near death. And when I found that freedom that I honestly didn't think was actually possible for me, I set out on a mission to help others find that freedom, and as many as possible. I wrote the book and published my book November 6th, 2019 for my 2 years clean and sober. Then after that, started coaching and training other people in recovery to write and publish books, because I started getting all these emails and messages from people that my book was helping. And then, my first student, Brittany Priestley, you can see her book in the background back here. She published her book, Mommy Drunkest, in April of 2020. And the same DA that prosecuted her 4 times in her addiction bought a big box of her books he now gives away to women that he's prosecuting that are in the same situation she was in. And that's the power of a story of hope, a story of recovery, a story of overcoming something in our life that was, at a time we didn't think was possible to overcome. And I believe that there's other people out there that are struggling with the things that everybody else has overcome. And it's our purpose to help others out of the situations that we've made it through. So Recovered on Purpose, we're 100% about helping addicts in recovery share their stories powerfully through books, podcasts, speaking engagements, videos, social media, in order to reach addicts out there that are struggling in a new way that's never been done before. We haven't ever had this state of the internet in recovery until this moment now. In the last 5 years, social media has blown up, and we don't have to be anonymous anymore. We can have our fellowships, that we're a part of. We don't have to go around telling everybody the fellowship we're a part of, because that breaks tradition. We're 100% supposed to talk about our recovery as loudly and proudly as we can for those suffering, to find a message that will help them. And that's what Recovered on Purpose does.
And it makes you more accountable when you put it out there, you know,
Exactly.
got eyes on you.
Yeah.
One thing I don't think some people understand, and mind you, I commend anyone that wants to help someone that's going through recovery, whether it's alcohol, drugs, whatever. But it really takes someone who's been through it, if you know what I mean. I
100%.
I think the addict will, he sees through the BS when it comes to someone who's just gone and got a certification or a diploma. compared to someone who's actually been there and done that. You
Yes.
understand, you know, the thought process of reasoning. You know, how many times have you reasoned with yourself as, oh, you know what, I'm just going to do this time, and I won't do it again. Or, you know, I've even gone as far as to flip a coin whether I was going to do some kind of drug or not that day.
Yep.
That's sad.
And if you say heads, I don't use, and it's heads, well, I guess I'll flip it again.
Hmm. I have done that too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad that you bring that up about, addicts being the ones that can help other addicts, because, when it was first founded, when recovery was first founded, in 1934 by Bill W. and Dr. Bob were the founders of AA and the 12 steps. Before that, for centuries, the medical community was trying to help people like me. There wasn't a lack of people trying. There wasn't a lack of insane asylums, which is what they used to be. They literally used to just lock us up. There was even a period of history in the United States where they started castrating addicts and alcoholics. And if that's the case, why have we now in the new age started to refocus on medical people being the ones that can help us,
Right.
when it's always been that we were the solution? The ones who have recovered are the solution for the ones out there that are suffering. And I'm not knocking, treatment. I'm not knocking therapy. Those are good things, but they're not able to have the same effect that an addict who has recovered can have on an addict that is struggling. They just can't. And we need to stop pretending like there's a solution out there that's going to work medically. We have to stop it. We have to rise up as a community and take responsibility for the over 100,000 deaths that are happening right now. And it's a direct result of us stopping the fire that used to be in this community to go out and help people.
You know, I don't know if you remember talking about this before with me, but I have a disease in my spine, and the bones deteriorate, and it causes nerve pain, it causes other pains, and it's very difficult to go through a day with the pain that I experience. And when I spoke to my doctor, I flat out told him, I said, I can't get on opioids because I know me, I'm gonna get hooked.
Yeah.
And I said, but how am I going to deal with this pain? And I guess you can see it as a blessing, I suppose, that even though the medication they put me on is made for addicts, it's a methadone. Off label, it's for pain.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible. So I don't feel that same feeling I did when I used to take, other drugs.
Yeah.
And I can't get on opioids. I know me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
I've had a couple experiences in recovery where, I had to have dentist work, or I had to have a procedure done. And I remember the first time, I think I was in my first year of recovery, and I had to get a tooth pulled. And I'm in there, and the dentist finishes up, and then she's talking to her dental assistant about what to prescribe me. And she says, in 10 milligram oxycodone. And I'm still like full of stuff in my mouth. And before I could even think, my hand shut up, was like, I'm an addict. I'm an addict. Like, don't give me that stuff. I can't do that stuff. It doesn't work for me. It might, for me, even when I had something that I needed those for pain for someone like me, right? The amount of damage that it did to my life and the amount of pain it caused was far greater than the amount of pain that could subside due to it. And I'm not even willing to take that chance, for me. So I applaud you for knowing that about yourself.
yeah, I highly recommend it. Anyone out there, if you are an addict, talk to your doctor about it, because oxycodone, I know I'd be taking a handful of them in just a few days. And that's the sad part. And, making excuses. When I was drinking, people would talk about alcoholics. I'd say, well, I'm not an alcoholic. I just drink on the weekends. And then it got to be where I was drinking a few times during the week. Well, I'm not an alcoholic because I don't drink every day. And then it got to be about every day. And I was like, well, I'm not an alcoholic because I'm not drunk all day long. Well, that started happening.
Yep. Yep.
And yet we still will make that excuse. I don't care if you are a weekend warrior, if you feel that need every weekend to drink, you're an alcoholic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that what people need to realize for themselves, and how I kind of talk to people about it, is doesn't matter how many days in a row you're drinking, because that can always increase. It matters if you start drinking, do you know how much you're going to drink? Are you able to say, I'm only going to have 2 beers? Are you able to say that and stick to that? And if not, that's one sign. And then the second sign is, are you able to stop? If you're able to stop for a significant amount of time, like give yourself 90 days. If you can stop legitimately for 90 days on your own and, feel the effects of living without alcohol, then you're probably not alcoholic. Because people like us, I knew when I was 19 years old that I was an addict. I knew it was the first time that I started experiencing withdrawal. It was the first time I started realizing that, like, oh my gosh, I need these drugs to live. But just making that declaration, just accepting that and knowing that wasn't enough to even start the process of recovery for me. I had to go through a whole bunch of trials and war and these traumatic events over and over and over, and trying to stop over and over and over and over and over, until I got to a point where it wasn't just the knowledge of knowing that I was an addict or an alcoholic. It was knowing that I was completely out of control and there was nothing I could do to solve the problem myself. That's when recovery could actually happen for me.
What do you say to that person who says that they're too scared to go through withdrawals? Because I know how it feels. It's like the worst flu you can ever possibly have.
Yeah.
And it's not just one day. At least for me, it took me several days, but
Yeah.
I was willing to do it. What do you say to the person that may be reluctant because of that?
Well, the beautiful thing about the medical system now is that there's things to help you through withdrawals. And number two, I wasn't able to do anything. I wasn't able to go to treatment. I wasn't able to go to a detox, nothing like that. I just didn't have the resources to do that. And for the first 25 days of my recovery, I was craving and withdrawing and shaking, and like my body was detoxing alone in a way that, I hope nobody ever has to go through. And if you do go through that and you're somebody that doesn't have the resources like me, A, it's possible. And B, on day 26, it completely went away and it hasn't come back because I went through it once. For me, I would rather go through something once that sucks and go all the way through it than go through something 100 times, 3 days here, 2 days here, 5 days here. 25 days is really only, 5 of the times that you stop for 5 days and suffer and then you start again. And there's so much beauty on the other side of that. And, the hero's journey is all about going through that pain, going through that suffering, because what you learn is that you're somebody who can. Now in my recovery, I've been through so much stuff in my recovery where I didn't revert back to drugs, which used to be my solution. And, for instance, in December, I had this really baller job. I had just been promoted to general manager and got this nice 6-figure salary with bonuses and all this stuff. And then when I start getting into the business and I start noticing things, I'm like, I can't do this. I had moral issues with the way that the company was being ran. And I talked to the CEO and I was like, hey, I can't do it like this. If I'm going to be GM of this, we have to do it completely differently. Then him and I got in a really bad argument, ended up blocking and all this stuff, lost my job that I was, really excited about. 30 minutes later, my puppy has something that looks like a seizure right in front of me. And then on Christmas Day, 6 days after that, my dad passes away. So 3 things right in a row that were super, super difficult. But because I know that I'm someone that can go through difficult things, I was able to take care of my puppy, find out that he had parasites that we had to get rid of, and we got rid of them. I was able to speak at my dad's funeral, show up for my family, and be there for my family and friends and his brothers and sisters. And if I'm somebody that isn't able to go through hard times, then I'm not going to be able to show up for life. And it's so worth it to learn that about yourself and to show yourself that you are capable. Because I want to tell you that you are. If you're listening to this right now and you're afraid of withdrawals, you're afraid of the how hard it is to recover, it is hard. There's a reason why, because it's so rewarding. Nothing in life that's worth it is given to you easy.
True. Very true. Now, I mean, you may have a different opinion, but for me, when people say do it for yourself, I get that, but I needed something to believe in order to continue this journey. And for me, it was my relationship with my kids.
Mm.
I was an awful father when I was drinking and doing those drugs. I wasn't so much physically abusing my children as it was mentally abusing them, because they were watching their father kill himself, basically.
Yeah.
I wasn't spending the time with them that I should have, helping them with homework and all that. And then my first wife ended up running off with another man, and it came down to who's going to get the kids.
Mm.
That came a point where I said I have to change, because my ex, she had her mental problems. I don't want to go through that because I don't want to embarrass her. But I had my addiction, and because of the things that she did, I was able to get custody of my children.
Amen.
But it didn't stop there, though. I slipped. I slipped, and I saw that pattern coming back, and it's like I've got to stay on the right track.
Yep.
Thankfully, I did, and I'm still sober today.
Amen.
What's your thoughts on that? Because if it had just been me by myself, I don't think I would have cared enough.
Yeah. Well, two things. Number one, they did a study on identities and the power of identities for addicts and addicts that are trying recovery. And one of the strongest identities that someone in recovery can attach to that keeps them in recovery is I am a good parent. So it's a very strong identity, and to have it as a father is extremely, extremely strong. And it's actually, it happens to be rare. It's usually the mother that grasps onto that. So that's, it says something about you and what you think of your kids, And then number two, there's a point in the process where you have to start it for yourself. You have to. Like, I got to a point where, there was nothing left. I didn't have any options. I didn't have anybody, even around anymore that I could do anything for. I had lost everything. And it got to a point where I had to do it for myself. And then very shortly after that, once I got it, right, in order to keep it, it had to immediately switch to doing it for other people. As soon as I actually was freed, as soon as I actually got it for myself and had that psychic change and understood that, my life has just changed. I just found freedom from something I didn't think I was ever going to find freedom from. Then it was extremely imperative that I switch the focus to other people. And I can tell you an example of this. I'm a 12-stepper. I did the 12 steps. I was freed on day 26 after I did my first ever 5th step on day 25. And I made this promise to myself and to my sponsor that I wouldn't start sponsoring other people until I was all the way through my amends, like all the way through the 9th step and working on 10, 11, 12, which is kind of the maintenance program, right? And in my first 60 days, I had just left this meeting in Denver, and I drive away and I see this kid, like 19, 20 years old. And I pull over and I'm talking to him, and he's this little, crack addict. And I'm in my first 60 days and I'm talking to him and stuff. And he's telling me how hard it is. I'm like, hop in, and he hops in the car and we're talking, and I ended up taking him to a meeting. And after that meeting, he asked me to sponsor him. And until that point, I was kind of lackadaisical on my amends. I was doing them, but I was kind of lackadaisical. I still had a little over half of them done. And because I had somebody that needed me, because I really recognized somebody needed me, I finished the rest of my amends in less than a week. And what that did is it showed me that it's not about me. It's not about me anymore. I have it. I got it. The way to keep it is by helping other people and focusing on them. Because that's what the sickness is when we're focusing on ourselves, when we're thinking about our problems and all that kind of stuff. In recovery, you'll have problems. I had some problems in my recovery, but I remember sitting in my really nice apartment in downtown Denver with a new motorcycle, new car, and all this stuff, a thriving business. And I was getting in my head about, oh, poor me and all this stuff. And I was like, I'm gonna get out and help some people right now. So I go on a walk in downtown, and I just find some people that are on the streets asking, hey, you guys hungry? You guys like pizza? And I go buy a couple pizzas and I sit down and just eat with them and talk with them and stuff like that. And it reminds you that it's not that bad. And it's not about you. You don't have to be thinking about all your problems, because you being alive gives you the opportunity to help somebody else. And when you realize that, life opens up to you. It really, and fulfillment opens up to you. You'll never be as fulfilled as you can be until you find your purpose in helping other people, because each and every one of us was born to serve other people. That's why we were born.
Yes, I totally agree with you on that. The media and society in general has been on this kick for so long to say, look at me, oh, woe is me, I'm a victim, and everything's about me. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. I mean, if you read the Bible, Jesus wasn't all about him. He had all the power, but yet he would get down on his knees and clean people's feet because he knew the importance of serving others.
Yeah.
Even though he's king, he could easily snap his fingers and everybody has to bow to him, but no, he served others. And when I started doing this particular show, I realized the importance of sharing the things that I've gone through, not only to help others, which really is the main focus, is to help others.
Yeah.
But it also reminds me of why I need to stay sober. And it's kind of a way of making me accountable to stay sober. Yeah. So yeah, I get what you're saying. Serving others, it makes you feel good. I'm not gonna lie, I'm addicted to that feeling of when somebody says, wow, thanks for bringing Adam on the show, because it really helped me. I got my life together, or I was ready to end it all, and you brought so and so on the show, and it really inspired me. Man, oh God, that feeling, man.
Yeah. And I actually train that in my courses, because when you're an addict, right, and you're addicted to a substance, you wake up in the morning and what's your first thought? I need dope.
Yeah, right.
I need dope. And then your thought process the entire time from when you first have that thought is, how am I getting dope? What do I have to do to get this dope? And you're constantly thinking about getting dope until you meet the dope man. You get the dope and you put it inside your body and you get that dopamine rush. And what happened by us doing that day after day after day after day after day for so long is we created neurohighways in our minds that when we have this thought, we're doing all of this to get this dopamine release. And the thing about those neurohighways is we can't cut them off. They're going to exist the rest of our life. All we can do is change the car that we're driving on that highway. And what I train people in my courses to do, we do this personal why statement that we consistently tell ourselves 3 times a day. We speak it out to ourselves, and each of us has a different one, because we have certain people that we want to serve. And if you're constantly thinking about, I'm the example of what's possible for people when they recover, and you're thinking this over and over and over and over, the dopamine release is no longer dope, but it's when you get that message from someone saying, hey, I saw you on that podcast and I'm going to treatment tomorrow. Hey, I watched your testimony. And I just wanted to let you know I watched it 90 days ago and I have 90 days today. These are messages that I get on a regular basis now, messages and emails and things. And it's not that, and I got to this in a coaching call with someone a couple weeks ago, where, we're not using the people as a drug, right? It just has this same effect on us once we have that impact. And that's what's been taken out of the recovery community, is a focus on finding that. That's what the solution is. When you're sitting across from someone suffering and you happen to have the solution coming out of your mouth, and you watch them and their lights turn on in their eyes, sitting across from you at a diner. That feeling, I'm getting chills right now because I've had this experience many times now in my recovery, and there's nothing like it. It's stronger than any dope. Watching somebody change right in front of you because you made the decision to go through those 25 days of withdrawals one more time.
And it's important for my audience to know, I don't do this looking to get praise, but when it comes, I know it sounds sappy, but it's an incredible feeling.
100%.
And we may never even see or hear from the person that we've helped, but somebody out there needs to hear the message when they
100%.
get, oh man, just thought of that. I'm like you, I get those chills.
Amen.
For me, I'm sorry, go ahead. This is your time.
Yeah, I was going to say that, there's a certain kind of faith that we're able to connect to in our recovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people in recovery, and I quote the Bible a lot, and don't tell people I'm quoting the Bible because, you don't necessarily have to, because it's the truth. I'll tell people all the time in recovery, each and every one of us is either a seed planter or a seed waterer. Every single one of us that gives a message to somebody that's positive, encouraging, you can do it. This is my story. This is my testimony of overcoming recovery or overcoming addiction. That person, if they're getting fed into enough by planters and waterers, that's going to grow. That message is going to grow. And if we're constantly doing that with faith in God, we don't necessarily have to know if that person, found recovery. We can just have faith that they did, because we did our part, right? And then sometimes you get the opportunity where you literally get to be the person one-on-one that helps somebody change their life completely.
Speaking on the subject of God, I've had a few people come on that they talk about how they get God's message out, but without actually referencing God or referencing the Bible. They use the same principles, the same message, but in a different way. So I don't understand why society today, actually, I think I do understand why, but why society has made God almost like a bad word now. Everything good is evil and everything evil is good.
You do know exactly why. You do know exactly why. And there's
exactly.
I'm mentoring somebody that's she just went from a really nice corporate job and she's going over to her own business, and she has God in her business. Like her whole thing is about how to connect with God in this certain way that she does. And her first meeting with 8 people that she was bringing in, she brings her friends in to do this presentation to, and she's been in this kind of new age community for a little while, and she's kind of stepping away because she had this profound experience with God. And these people just bashed her, like, how could you use that? And and what's really interesting, that I was talking to her about, I was like, there is not a Christian in my life that I couldn't bring something to that I'm passionate about where they would tear me apart and make me feel bad. Not one person. And that comes from a place of ego. And what are they actually battling? And I made it clear, it's not about you. Just make that clear. It's not about you. It's not about your work. It's not about your beliefs. It's about their own.
Mhm.
And then B, we're talking about, well, maybe I need to take this out and this out and this out. And I was like, well, if you do, how far is it going to go? That means that you're conforming to something that people are making you conform to. And the more you edge God out, the more of his power is not going to be in your business.
Mhm.
And I made it clear, I love you and I'm here with you however I can be. If you're gonna edge God out, I can't help you grow it, because that was our understanding. I'm somebody that, I'm not gonna help somebody build a pornography platform with my
Right.
skills that God has given me, right? I'm not gonna help somebody build a witchcraft platform, because I know in my own experience that stuff is truly, 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 demonic, and it harms people, it harms society. So, I happen to know that God is able to work all things according to his purpose. And, I'm okay with whatever people want to do, but I'm not hopping in it. And, when we got to a point, it was like, all of these people that said that, they all think that you're weird for talking about God and doing this and that. But I can tell you the reason why you're even having any part of the other conversation is because you and I are having a conversation. How many other people in your life right now are talking to you about God, talking to you about your purpose and how much he loves you and your identity and all of these things, and telling you truth? You're never going to find the fulfillment in life until you connect values with the people around you. You have
Mhm.
to have people around you that have the same values, and that makes
Yep.
it so that when you walk into a 12-step fellowship and you have faith, when a bunch of people in there start talking to people behind your back and whispering like, hey, that guy is like crazy about God, stay away from him. You know, you don't, that literally happened to me in my first year of recovery, because I can't stop talking about God, because that's what happened. God saved me. I can't not tell you that, because that's what happened. So here I am, feeling like I'm being excluded because of my belief in God. But at the same time, I'm totally okay with it. I don't stop talking about what happened for me. And then when people start, the ones that are supposed to hear it, hear it. The ones that are supposed to find that message, find it. I start finding that tribe. And I'm still welcome in there. And people start realizing, okay, he's not really crazy. That's just like really what happened. You know, I support him. I see him helping people, There is a way to do it also, though. Like, I'm 100% believer in Christ. When I get the opportunity to talk about Christ, I talk about him. I talk about, when I met him face to face, and that's actually what happened to make it so I got sober. I tell this testimony. But when somebody is suffering in their addiction, I am very, tactful about how I speak with them. And I
Yeah.
think the best way to do that is ask questions. Ask as many questions as possible. And then, when they reply to you, you can reiterate what they just said to you. So what I'm hearing is, and you reiterate what they said, and does this make you feel like, you're worthless, or that you can't do it? Am I hearing this right? That'll make them feel so incredibly heard and understood that they'll start opening up more and opening up
Mhm.
more and opening up more. And if you only have one solution for an addict that's suffering, you're going to help way less than possible. But if you're able to get to the point where someone has told you that, they have a lot of damage from their childhood from the church, okay? If you can't get to that point before you tell them Jesus is the answer, then you're going to miss the opportunity of them getting freedom and finding Jesus later. Or
Mhm.
if you're talking to somebody that has, I've gone to the 12-step meetings all the time and they just don't work. So why are you going to tell them, go to a meeting every day, get a sponsor, and do the steps? Why are you going to tell that person that? When you're helping someone, make sure you're finding out where they're at, hear them, understand them, and then do your best to give them a solution that fits them and walk them through the process. You don't have to be right about everything in your recovery.
It's amazing that you hear even on mainstream news if you say you're a Christian, automatically you're an extremist. That's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
I think people would be amazed to know how much God has really influenced society in general. Where do you think our laws came from? Where do you think our Constitution came from? Just the the founding of this country, creating this country, and yeah, man has his input, and that's why there's been mistakes through the years, because that was the man part of it. But the godly part of it, things go smoothly. And unfortunately, I think people, they don't want to feel bad about the things that they're doing. They don't want to hear what they're doing is sinful. They don't want that conviction, so they oppose God because they don't want to feel guilty.
Yep.
But I don't know how I would be able to live if I didn't have the thought of God going through my head every day. That's why I do my best not to curse. It's why I try to be an example in front of my children and my grandchildren. It's why I'm a good husband. Uh, I don't go running around chasing other women, because that conviction's in my heart, and I think of God, and it helps me to help other people.
Amen. And I mean, that's, if you are a real Christian, you should be an extremist, A. And I think that there's a lot of people in the faith that are not extremists. They're just, yeah, I'm Christian, I believe in Christ. Then you need to be out sharing about it. You need to be helping people with it. And B, I think that when we are strong in our values, right? And there was a study that was done on people that were going back to prison. The recidivism rate is super, super high. And what they found, the population that was the highest were the ones that didn't have a community of shared values. They weren't able to talk about, when you ask them about their values, they have the lowest score out of everybody, and what the values of knowing and following God does for you, it makes it so that it's not just about, what's legal or illegal, in the eyes of the government, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, there's things that are technically legal that I would never do in business, ever. I would never do it, because I know that in the long run, in the short run, I'm just not going to feel good about doing it. And in the long run, I know that it's going to harm myself and others later on, and having that value system and being able to connect it to something that is greater than yourself makes it so that you can go through life with more confidence. You can go through life with more, it actually takes less energy to live on values than to not. Like, for instance, I think Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs, both, when they woke up, they wore the exact same outfit every single day, just that they didn't have to take up that energy thinking about what they're going to wear. So if you're coming up to a decision, instead of taking all this energy about, like, well, what's going to be the benefit for me if I do this, and what's going to be, the pros and cons and all this stuff, if you just ask, what would God do? Boom, and then you go. That makes it so that you can move faster and faster and faster and faster in life. And, you have this confidence that God's with you. And just like you're saying, we're supposed to, as Christians, love God, love people. All the laws can be summed up into these two things. And the only religion that is considered pure and faultless by the Father is to take after orphans and widows in their distress, and to not be corrupted by the world. So what does that mean? That means we don't edge God out. Whenever I'm sharing my testimony, I share about Jesus. But I've talked to him very, very deeply about Recovered on Purpose and about what the mission is and what we're doing here. And I know that you don't need Jesus to quit using drugs and alcohol. I know way too many people that, got clean and sober without it. And I also know that it's much harder to find Jesus when you're sticking a needle in your arm and you're going to die in a year.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we should be bringing God back into the conversation again. That's why a lot of the values have gone downhill. It's We used to look for our leaders and our politicians, the ones that went to church, that that prayed, and now they think of, oh, you're one of them crazy God Jesus freaks, right?
Yep.
And they steer away from you. And if they only knew the solutions that have been handed to them are based on biblical principle.
You know why there's 12 steps? Because Bill sat under the chair, or under the stairs in his house, and he was trying to figure out how to rewrite the Oxford group's 4 steps, because that's not how they were actually doing them. He's like, well, if Jesus had 12 disciples, 12 steps is going to be what it is. And then he figured out 12 steps.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yep. Truth.
Well, unfortunately, the world is the way the world is, and I get where the folks that I've talked to, where they're coming from. They still are using biblical principles, but they're just packaging it a different way. Let's put it that way. Still
100%.
using God's word, but that's the way you kind of have to be.
Yeah.
It's sad, but
Well,
true.
It says in Ecclesiastes that there's nothing new under the sun. If you read any motivational, if you've read the Bible enough, if you read any self-help book, you will see exactly where it's coming from. And it's coming from the Bible. Every piece of wisdom that is on the earth right now is said in the Bible. I don't know how many times I've read the Bible now, and I've read a whole bunch of other books, and it's put in different words, which is great. I love other books also, but they're all based on the truth. If they're based on truth, then they're based on the truth. But they just take God out of it. They give you the power to do this and this and that, and they take God out of it, which actually takes most of the power away from it.
Gosh, how many people have already turned this off because we started talking about God?
Well, to the ones that are still here, I mean, bless you. And I just ask right now that Jesus would come in and help you with whatever you're dealing with right now, whatever you're thinking about that you need help with. God, I just ask that you would send angels over to the listeners right now to guard them, and to, God, just make a way for whatever they're working on right now. If it's something they're struggling with, God, we just come against it. If it's something they want to grow in, God, we ask for blessing and abundance and the floodgates of heaven to open up on them, God. And we thank you for them being here and listening to this.
Amen to that. What is the name of your book? Or you've written more than one book, haven't you?
I'm on my second book right now. I'm working on it. But my first book is called From Chains to Saved, One Man's Journey Through the Spiritual Realm of Addiction.
Okay. You just one day said, okay, I'm going to write a book, or how'd that come about?
So my second year of recovery in 2019, I came on as a chief marketing officer of this company in March. The year before, they had done $48,000. I came on as chief marketing officer March 8th of 2019, implemented my strategies, built a team and everything, and we did 1.2 million that year. In September of 2019, I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life. I'm in my second year of recovery. I have this new apartment, car, and all this stuff. And I'm sitting down in my apartment, and I have a thought that I'm depressed, that I have a thought about suicide for the first time in a really long time. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? This can't be it. I was like, because I made it. I'm doing everything, all the things. And I go over to my bed, drop down on my knees, and I'm like, God, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of chasing after this. This isn't fulfilling me. I don't know what you have me here to do, God, but I want to help millions of people, God. Help me help millions of people, God. Show me what I need to do. And I'm praying deep into it, and then I go to bed. Next morning, I wake up and do the exact same prayer, drop down on my knees, and I'm just like, God, show me how to help millions of people. I want to speak to millions of people, God. I want to help millions of people, God. And then 15 minutes later, I'm eating breakfast, and I think I'm on Instagram or Facebook, and I'm kind of like scrolling through, and this ad pops up for a conference out in California for bringing God into your business. And I was like, well, if that's not an answer, I don't know what is. So hop on it, and I buy the ticket and everything. I go on a whim. I know nobody there, nothing. And the first day of the conference, I'm in the, like, right in front of the stage, because they have Jesus culture playing on the stage, right? And there's like 1,500 people there. And I don't know anybody there. And I'm just kind of worshiping and have my hands up and stuff. And then I hear a voice, and it goes through my head and it hits me in the heart. And it says, your new company is called Recovered on Purpose. And I look up, I was like, that's good. And I pull out my phone and I like get on GoDaddy. I buy the domain name, make sure it's good on Secretary of State. And I'm like, wow, okay. Don't know what that is yet. And then the last day of the conference on September 28th, someone came up on the stage and starts talking about, self-publishing a book. And I'm like rigorously taking notes, and I'm like, listening to everything he's saying. And that voice hits me again. It says, if you publish your book for your 2 years clean and sober, you're going to inspire so many others to do the same. And I was like, 2 years clean and sober, that's in 5 weeks. So I know, though, when you hear that voice, it's incredibly important to follow it, because I didn't want to miss that opportunity. So I went home, called my partners, and told them basically I need a few weeks off. I'm focusing on something. And for the first 2 days, I knew I wasn't going to be able to just sit down and write a book. I knew I couldn't just like write out a book and have it work. So for the first 2 days, I dumped out every story of my life in 5 words or less, just so that I could get everything out, everything I could think of, everything I could remember, dumped them all out. And then I figured out what the message is that I wanted to deliver with my book. And I wanted to share my testimony and the spiritual experiences I've been through. So I start taking out, stories that were spiritual experiences and leaving all the other ones out. Then I make a list of all the spiritual experiences. And then I map them out to make the story of my testimony, right? And then I just sit down with this checklist, and I wrote one after the other. And on my 2 years clean and sober, I published my book. The next day it became a bestseller, outsold the big book for my second month that it was out. And it was #1 bestseller for 4 or 5 months. And then what I didn't realize at the time that I was starting to write this book was that that was actually the foundational teaching of everything I do at Recovered on Purpose. Because what I do is I teach addicts and alcoholics how to share their story as a powerful message. So the way that I put together my book is how I started training others how to write books. And then it started to be how I train others how to share their stories speaking, how to put their story together into the message that they want to deliver. And that's the power about following that voice, because when he told me Recovered on Purpose, I had no idea what it was. When he told me to write my book, I was like, okay, I'll write the book. And during that process, what he was doing was bigger than anything my mind could have fathomed at that time. So following the breadcrumbs, following the little voice that is him.
I've talked to other folks that have encouraged me to write a book, but number one, I just feel like there's so many more interesting stories to hear, but I'm not a writer. I don't know how to make it sound like a book should sound, what would you tell me?
I would ask you a bunch of questions. I would say, do you want a book? Do you really, really desire to have a book?
I think it would be a great idea.
Okay, I would ask you why. Why do you want to have a book?
I just think that some of the stories that have happened to me during my lifetime, it might be encouraging to others to know that you can get through some of these things.
Yeah. And then what are you willing to do to write it? If you're not a writer, there's a totally different process to writing a book. So,
geez, I would love for somebody to help me write it.
Yeah, you're looking at $35K about.
Yeah, I kind of figured it was going to cost some money.
Yeah, I've talked to a few people, some ghostwriters and things like that, and that's about the going rate, anywhere between 15 and 120K, depending on the amount of work that they do and the marketing and stuff behind it. But you can also, there's a way to do voice to text, and you can keep yourself on track and tell the story, and then you send it off to an editor. What I tell people is you want to get it mapped out first, exactly what it is. do the same process I just talked about, right? I call it the mind dump story vault. And you write out all of your experiences through your life from the time you were born until now that you can possibly think of. Stories, experiences, most people have at least 150 on there that they can get out. And it's really, really healthy to get it all out. You have to write them down in 5 words or less. Like, for instance, instead of saying the day I was at IHOP with Brendan and I was eating breakfast and then got a text message and then Jesus showed up in front of me, all I write down is Jesus IHOP, because my mind knows what that is, right? And it makes it so you can write out a whole bunch of them. Yeah. Then you want to figure out what the actual message is that you want to deliver. So it sounds like you want to talk about stories that you have overcome. So then you start pulling out the experiences from that list that are either things that you went through that are really hard, or things that were the process of overcoming those things. And then also the parts of your life that show that, you have this incredible life now. So it's like experience, strength, and hope, right? And then you put them in a list of order, from, birth till now. And you write one at a time.
Yeah, I remember in school that them telling us about brainstorming and putting everything together. But I don't know, maybe I'll just try it and see, because Lord knows if I had 35K, it had already been written.
Right. And honestly, depending on why somebody wants a book, I wouldn't suggest anybody invest 35K to have somebody write their book for them, unless you have some kind of legitimate like goal with the book. Like, you're not going to get 35K back from your book. Like, it's very, very rare that somebody makes 35K off of a book anymore. I've gotten into the positive a little bit, but then, I've also given the same amount of books that I've sold, I've given away. So it's not about making money. So even if it takes you, a few years, who cares? Just start working on it. Get a manuscript together. It could be a 15,000, 30,000, or 90,000 word book. Mine was only 33,000 words.
So I know you're not finished yet. So what's next on your agenda?
Man, we've got a lot going on right now. Recovered on Purpose is a 501c3 nonprofit as of end of last year. And right now we're in the works of getting some pretty serious partnerships with some corporations that want to help the addiction recovery community. Later this year, we're doing a study on the efficacy of my courses for relapse prevention for people in their first year of recovery leaving treatment. And then we're also doing some other things that can't announce yet, but very, very exciting things. Very, very exciting things to help this community and to disrupt all the things that I believe are wrong. It's wrong that 9% of people that go to long-term treatment make it a year. That's wrong. That means that something's not working. And the fact that everybody's doing the same thing and trying to focus on fixing the same thing over and over and over, that's wrong. There's something else that needs to happen. So that's what's next.
So are you finding more and more companies are dedicating some kind of help for their employees that are going through addiction problems? Because I know I worked for the city, and they had a program for us, and a large portion of it was actually paid by the city, and further treatment came out of our pockets, but it wasn't as expensive as you think it would be. But are more companies doing things like this?
Yeah, I think it's also law, for
is it?
a lot of it. Yeah. They're not allowed to retaliate if you have to go to treatment, if they have their health benefits and stuff like that. But also I think that it's becoming more understood, which is great. When I got clean and sober, it was still stigmatized very heavily. I was looked at as a piece of dirt when I was found dead by the police. And what I'm seeing now is that it's changed to where even people that aren't addicts and that don't have someone in their life that is, most of them are not looking at us as weak-willed, pieces of dirt anymore. They're understanding like, hey, this person just needs help. They're sick. And when they do get help, they will probably be my best worker. Because that's the case for most addicts. When they recover, you got your solid employee.
I didn't realize that was a law.
Yep, they're not allowed to retaliate. They're not allowed to fire you, because
that part I knew, but I mean like the help in getting recovery.
Like if you go to treatment,
Mm-hmm.
they have to let you go and have a job when you come back. Yep.
Well, yeah. But I'm saying having actual programs for
That's not yet.
their.
That's
Okay.
not yet. Yeah.
Okay.
And that puts way too much on employers. I don't think that, that should be required. I just think that it should be something that is looked at as a positive place to work if they care about their employees that much.
Oh, totally agree with that.
Yeah.
One of the things that they had told us is that if, say, you were fixing to go to drug screening and you went to HR and you said, look, I'm not going to pass this because I'm an addict and I need help. Well, then they would get you the help and you wouldn't get fired for it. But if you of course you went through the drug screen and got popped, well, you were out of there. It's better to go ahead and confess.
Yep. 100%.
If you want to keep your job.
100%. Yep.
So, what you have a website? What is that website domain?
recoveredonpurpose.org, and you can actually pick up a copy of From Chains to Save totally free. And I also have a relapse prevention worksheet on there, and it's totally different than any other kind of relapse prevention. We don't talk about triggers and what you need to avoid and things like that. We talk about what you want to do. And we do some exercises about your identity. We do some exercises about, what your bucket list is and how to actually start achieving it, and places that you can serve and stuff like that. So, because that's the number one relapse prevention, who you are and who you really want to be.
Yeah. Well, I'd say as much as it hurt, there was people that I grew up with, that I partied with, I did a lot of drugs with, and I love them, but I had to kind of disassociate myself with them. And I say I love them from afar, as if they really needed me, I would be there, but I just can't hang out with them anymore.
Yeah.
And I have surrounded myself with people who are looking to be successful, or they are successful. Most of them are very godly people. At least they've got their head on straight, and they're not out partying and doing all the crazy stuff I used to do. And it's hard to walk away from people that you've spent 30, 40 years with.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy, but sometimes you just have to do it.
Yep.
And yeah, find people who have gone through recovery and can help you.
Yeah. 100%.
And what about social media?
Yeah, Facebook, Recovered on Purpose is the best place. That's where I post the most. I'm on YouTube as well, Recovered on Purpose. You can subscribe there. And there's a lot of big things coming with Recovered on Purpose. So, and I can't wait for the announcements. I can't make them yet because they're not confirmed, but we are in the final stages of some pretty big partnerships.
Oh, wow. Well, let me know when it is confirmed.
Yeah. Amen.
Well, anyway, Adam, thank you so much for coming on, man. And I appreciate your time, and I wish you nothing but the best. And for those that are needing to get help, talk to Adam. If not, there are resources out there. Just, if you got a cell phone, you got a computer in front of you, Google it. There's lots of programs that you can go to. See if your employers have something. There's different ways of doing it, but get the help.
Yeah. Kyle, thanks so much for having me, brother. It's good to see you again. Appreciate you. Everything you're doing.
The pleasure is all mine, my friend. And for you folks out there, thank you so much for being here. If it's your first time, please hit that subscribe button, and I hope you'll come back. For my regulars, thank you for making this possible for me to do. So until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network